All right, we have our web application server generating JSON for the albums and the photos. We've modified it to also sort of double as a file server and send down whatever content we request. And in the previous part, we took a look at Mustache and how to sort of work with templates and generate templates for our pages. The last thing we need to do is sort of take a look at that key component we talked about in a couple parts back called the bootstrapper. So we saw here that we first download the page stub from the client, and then the page stub tells the client to get this JavaScript bootstrapper, which then downloads the HTML template, maybe gets some page data for it, and then massages all of these things, runs the template through Mustache, generates the final HTML, and sends that to the browser. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the first bootstrapper we're going to write, and that's for the home page because we only right now support pages/home. So we've called that pages.js, or home.js, I'm sorry. So it is just a simple little bit of jQuery code that we've written, and this is jQuery syntax to just say execute this when all the page resources have loaded. The first thing it does is it goes and sends off an asynchronous request to get the template for the home page, and it also at the same time sends off a request to get the album data from the JSON API server. When both of those requests are done and all of the AJAX requests have returned, it takes the resulting data from the album's JSON and applies that to the template that we downloaded using Mustache, and then takes the resulting output and replaces the whole page contents with that. You'll see here we actually use this jQuery thing called extend, which basically says given an existing object, take the contents of whatever you're providing here and add it to that. We don't really need to do that. We could have actually just said tdata equals d.data like that. But the first example I saw of templates started using that, and I've kind of stuck with it since then. And it's not a big deal either way. Let's take a look at our home.html template. Okay. Now, I take a list of albums, and the first thing I do is print out the length. Then I have a section block on that album, and for each one, I go ahead and print out the album name as sort of the name to display in the list, and then I also use that to generate a URL, which we'll see in later sections. You'll see here, however, that we're looking for under each object under album, I'm looking for something called album name. So let's go ahead here and run our Node server and double check that we're returning what we need. And that is albums.json. And you see we're not returning what we need. Our list of albums is actually just an array of strings. Now, we could do what we mentioned in the previous part on Mustache and just sort of use this dot here to refer to the object in the current context. But you could actually imagine that eventually we would like to not only have the album name, but also have the title and then maybe show a description or something like that. So I think we'd actually like to modify our JSON server here to start returning an object instead of just an array of strings. So we're going to go back to our server file here, and we're going to go to this load album list function, and instead of just pushing the name of a folder to the array of resulting album objects, I'm actually going to push an object with the album name being that, and then I'm also going to, with the name of that folder, and I'm also going to temporarily just use the folder name also as the title of it. And we'll add things like descriptions and photos later on. So now, when I run my JSON server, you'll see that I'm actually getting an array of objects with an album name and a title, and I'm just cheating and using the folder name for both of these right now. So all I needed to do is make a very small change to my JSON server to support this functionality. So let's go back to our template here. So now we see that this will work. I actually have objects with fields that Mustache can extract. In the inverse case, when albums is empty and there is nothing to do, I'll print this out instead. However, as we saw in the previous section on Mustache, I'm actually still going to print out there's 0 albums and there are currently no albums, and that's undesirable. So let's go ahead and say if we have albums, print this block like that. Now, We could modify our JSON server to sort of say, have albums only if we have any albums. But if I'm the JSON server author, I might be a little torqued by this. I don't really want to have to modify my server to support the quirks or vagaries of your templating engine. My JSON server is very clearly telling you how many albums there are, and I don't want to add or modify code just to support your Mustache templating engine or something. That's actually not a problem. It's not a big deal at all, and that's something that's going to come up quite a lot. The server, maybe because it's already shipped and the API can't change, for whatever reason, the server might not be returning data in a format exactly like we need. So what we're welcome to do here in our Bootstrapper is actually massage that data. So let's create a function here called massage, which after we've got all of our data, takes the final data, massages it, and instead uses that final data. So let's say function massage, and given some incoming data, says if the incoming data dot albums and data dot albums dot length is greater than 0, we can actually just add the new field ourselves, data dot, and what did we call it in the template? Have albums here. So we'll say data dot have albums equals true, else data dot have albums equals false, and now we'll return this new version of the data. And now we actually have modified or massaged the data ourselves to give us what the templating engine needs to do its work. Similarly, I'm not restricted to just doing one JSON request here. If I really wanted to, I could run a few here. I could get some users. I could get a list of advertisers if I was doing that on my page or something. I'm absolutely free to make multiple JSON requests, and this code here will only execute after they're all done. One of the downsides to this is that modern web browsers will often throttle the number of JSON requests you can make, the number of asynchronous AJAX requests you can make. And so you might run into limits with that. And it is one of the trade-offs you'll have to deal with when you're writing client-side pages. It won't actually prevent you from doing sort of multiple requests. What it will do is it'll just say you can only do 2 at a time. So you might have to be a little performance conscious and sort of monitor your page generation speeds to make sure the browser isn't throttling you or limiting you to less queries than you're able to handle at a time or something. So you can handle multiple things here. We actually don't need that anymore. You can massage your data here in the Bootstrapper. The Bootstrapper is really a place for you to interface and control exactly what you're working with. You could theoretically even get multiple templates if you wanted to get like a top bar template, a content template, and a page bottom template. You could load those all in and use Mustache to render those and then put those into appropriate parts of the page. So the Bootstrapper is really a very powerful component now, and it's again all in JavaScript, which we're familiar with and comfortable with. And equally importantly, if you have sort of separate people working on the HTML or the page layout and sort of style, chances are they'll be able to work with JavaScript a little bit too and be able to sort of work with things and test them out on their own, which is actually quite a nice benefit. So with all of this ready to go, we've got the modified server, we have our Mustache template for the home page, and we have the Bootstrapper ready to go. We should now be able to throw it all together and watch this in operation in the web browser.